What's up, guys, and welcome back to Moaning. If you guys are new here, then what is up? My name is Erica. Hey, how you doing? And if you're interested in knowing about the ancient Greeks and the Romans, what is my intro? If you're down to hear about any of that, if you're down to hear about the mythology, whatever it happens to be, maybe you are just here because you want to hear me ramble about book 21 of Homer's Iliad. Totally possible, totally acceptable. Then you guys are going to want to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so you know every single time I post in the future. But onto the topic of today's video, and today we're going to be discussing, as I just said, book 21 of Homer's Iliad, so why don't we just dive into the episode. Now, before we begin, I would like to share a very tragic story that literally just happened to me. So I had filmed this whole episode. It was about an hour and 5 minutes worth of footage. I then stopped the footage and then I checked it, and actually my phone, because I use my phone, had only recorded 1 minute and 43 seconds of it. I don't know where the rest of it went, but either way, I now have to record this whole thing again. But yeah, let's just get into it. So if I could summarize book 21 into one sentence, it would be that the gods fight each other and then Achilles fights a river. And I mean that literally, okay? I don't mean that figuratively. I don't mean that like Achilles is swimming through a river and like, oh my god, the current is really, like, no. He literally fights a river. It's wild, okay? I did mention beforehand how like weird shit starts happening and mythology definitely gets a little bit carried away. This is the perfect example of mythology getting carried away. So why don't I just dive into the book and we will actually just go into all the details so that I can try and fire out this episode. It won't be as good as the first time, but it's fine. We'll have to deal with it. So the book opens with Achilles, and he is actually driving all of the Trojans back to this plot of land that in the previous day, the Greeks had been terrified of. Like, they were sort of running away from Hector on this plot of land. So it's quite ironic and iconic, actually, that Achilles brings all of the Trojans back to this plot of land, and now the Trojans are terrified of Achilles. In fact, they are so scared that half of them are described as literally jumping into the river Xanthus, because that's literally the plot of land where they're at. So they're jumping into the river Xanthus in order to swim across Xanthus, in order to get home, in order to get back to safety, because Achilles is insane, as we know. Achilles himself jumps into the river at this point, and in fact he leaves his spear on the bank in order to just have his sword. So he jumps in, he's holding his sword above his head because, you know, rust and so he then gets into the river and he just sort of goes in this like circular motion with his sword, and he's literally just chopping people down like trees. That is not the description that is used in the Iliad, like trees, I mean, but that is how I see it, that he's just sort of going in a circular motion and killing everyone. And in fact, it's in this moment that he actually finds the 12 young Trojans that I've mentioned before. I mentioned when we were talking about Achilles trying to avenge Patroclus, he said that he wanted to kill young Trojan men, which I said was questionable. It still is, but he did mean it. He was serious about it, because it's now that he then finds 12 of them. He brings them onto the banks of the river. He then bounds their hands. That was what I was looking for. He bounds their hands with a leather strap, and then he hands them off to his companions to then take back to the Greek camps and back to Patroclus, even, so that he can sacrifice them later in honor of his best friend. So that happens down by the river. It's in this moment that Achilles comes face to face with one of Priam's sons, who's this guy called Lycaon. I'm absolutely not sure if that's how you pronounce it. This is how you spell his name, but I'm going to be calling him Lycaon. And we've mentioned him before because a god took on his form in order to come down to the battlefield. So we now meet this guy, and he can see Achilles and he's like, fuck me, I'm so dead. So Lycaon approaches Achilles as Achilles raises his spear, and as Achilles fires his spear, Lycaon sort of like ducks forward, like he lunges forward and ducks forward and grabs hold of Achilles' knees, and he starts to supplicate him. Like, literally. He's not even gonna fight. He's just like, please spare me. And actually the point of him doing this is actually quite important, because he is saying to Achilles that not only is he not worthy of dying, but he's not worthy of dying because he's not actually related to Hector, which is kind of important. So even though they do have the same dad, he claims that the relation isn't as strong because they don't have the same mom, so they didn't share a womb. So when he's supplicating, he's saying, look, Hector and people who are also the sons of Priam and Hecuba, you should be mad at them because he's the one who killed Patroclus. I had nothing to do with that. We only share a dad. That's about it. Please save me. Obviously, though, Achilles couldn't give less of a shit. We are not surprised by this. Achilles is just like, I don't care, we're meeting on the battlefield. And in fact, he's like, don't you know who I am? Don't you know how strong I am? I'm the son of a god. And so he ends up using his spear to stab the guy in the collarbone, and the guy dies. So the reason why I'm mentioning that is because not only is he not important, because he was literally introduced to be killed, but also the death isn't terribly fun. Like, once again, you guys know that I will always describe these like really fun and gory deaths. This is not one of them. But the reason why it's important is because Achilles, then as the guy is like dead on the ground, he picks up this guy by his foot and he like throws him into the river Xanthus. And Achilles is basically like, you can now lay with the fishes in the river and they'll eat your body. Like literally some mafioso shit. before like mafias were even a thing, and like The Godfather wasn't even a thing, but like Achilles is hopping on that trend hella early, and he's just like, sleep with the fishes. So that is why this moment is important, because he throws the body into the river Xanthus. And the reason why that's important is because this is when Xanthus starts getting mad, because Xanthus is a bit like, not chill. Not that Achilles notices, because he ends up getting into combat with this other guy on the banks of the river. His name is not important because, again, he's about to die because he's come into contact with Achilles. So like we know he's dead, but even then we do get his name. But because this guy is the son of a river, a different river, Xanthus actually infuses him with all this strength because he wants him to kill or at least injure Achilles. So he infuses this rando with all of the strength, and he's like, please injure Achilles. And Achilles, obviously, as he's being infused, Achilles then asks this guy, who the fuck are you, and who is your family line, and what are you doing here, and why do you think you can face me? Because they always have to have this conversation. I don't know why, but they always do. And then this guy replies with his entire family line and explains why he's important, and then at the end of it challenges Achilles to a fight, which Achilles is like, dope. So before Achilles can then, you know, fire anything at this guy, whether it be a spear or a sword or whatever, he doesn't even get his weapon out, and this guy fires both of his spears at Achilles in one go because he's ambidextrous. I love that detail. That like Homer's like, by the way, this rando, total rando, ambidextrous, can use both of his hands just as well as each other, which is a detail that he had missed out when he was talking about his little family line, which I think is really smart because Achilles does not see this coming at all. So one of the spears fired actually hits Achilles in the shield, so it does all, it doesn't do anything. And the other one then ends up scraping Achilles on the right forearm. And by say scraping, it doesn't actually go through. So it ends up landing behind Achilles in the ground. However, on the way, it does have this huge gash in Achilles' forearm. So Achilles is like, what? Despite the injury, Achilles is not really fazed by it. He then picks up his sword because he doesn't have a spear because it's in the bank of the river in front of him. So he picks up his sword and he goes to attack this Trojan dude, right? And this Trojan dude is now panicking because he doesn't have a weapon because he just fired both of his at Achilles. So he then turns around to pick up Achilles' spear out of even the bank of the river. And as he's turned around, he tries 3 times to get this spear dislodged. Doesn't work. 3 times. And on the 4th time, as he's trying to pull up this spear, Achilles gets close enough behind him and he stabs him through it's not the belly because it's through his back, but it ends up coming out like right through his belly button, and all of his guts pour onto the ground and he dies, and it's really icky. Now, as he's dying, Achilles obviously is stripping this guy of his armor because that is a thing in the Iliad. So he's stripping the guy of the armor, and it's in this speech that actually we hear that it's Achilles' dad's dad who is the son. No, Achilles' dad's dad is Zeus? Yes. Achilles' dad's... Wow, this is a little bit complicated. So Achilles' dad's dad is Zeus. So Achilles is not only the son of a god, Thetis, right? That he also has lineage back to Zeus himself. So because of that, he's like, I'm super powerful, and even though you're a river god and all of this, that I'm more powerful than you because of this great lineage that I have. Blah, blah, blah. As he's literally taking the armor off of this guy. Takes the armor off of this guy, he then picks up his own spear, and then after he moves all of that to the side, he then picks up this guy and then throws him into the river. Remember that Xanthus is already kind of annoyed. Now he's even more annoyed because Achilles just threw somebody else into the river. But he hasn't reacted yet, just wait, he will. I'm pointing all of these out because it's like, Xanthus does pop up in a hot second, but it's because of all of these little moves that Achilles makes that Xanthus is then like, ew, I don't like this guy at all. And Achilles doesn't notice because then he goes on this whole killing rampage. Like in this entire book, he kills 9 people that we have noted, minus the whole, slaughtering thing that happened in the river earlier. We don't know how many people he killed then, but we know it's a lot because then he goes on this little rampage, and this is what sets off Xanthus. Now, Xanthus, mind you, is also Scamandros, just in case I switch between the 2 names. That's the same river, just 2 different names. Either way, Xanthus now freaks the fuck out because literally like 6 people get thrown into the river. Xanthus takes on his mortal likeness, and he comes down to Achilles, and he just goes, Achilles, cut it the fuck out. Can you not see that my river is clogged with bodies? Stop throwing things into it and keep them on the goddamn plane. Is that so hard for you? And what's even better is that Achilles just replies in the most Achilles way, and he's just like, yeah, all right, fine, but I'm like not gonna stop killing Trojans just because it makes you kind of uncomfortable because you're on the Trojan side. I'm gonna keep killing them until either Hector kills me or I kill Hector. So like there will be more bodies. So like, peace. Now Xanthus is not hearing any of this. Right, Xanthus, Scamandros, however you want to refer to him, he is mad as hell. And so in this moment, when he hears this, he yells up to Apollo and he's like, the fuck are you doing? It was your job to protect all the Trojans. Where are you now? And as he's yelling this, Achilles then leaps into the river. I don't know why he does this. Every single time I read it, I'm just like, you know that Xanthus is mad at you. He literally just yelled at you. He literally just yelled at Apollo, and Achilles is like, whatever, I'm just gonna see if I can make this worse. Like, no, Achilles. So Achilles is swimming, and Xanthus now starts rousing up this whole like current and all of this and like waves into the river as a way to push out all the bodies that are clogging the river. That's how many people that Achilles has killed. It's clogged. The river is clogged. So he starts sort of trying to feed out all of these bodies onto the side of the plains, which why didn't he do this before he started yelling at Achilles? If like, you know, we know and he knows that he could do this. I just feel like he just complained about nothing when he could solve the problem. But either way, he starts doing that as Achilles is in the river. And on top of this, he then gets another wave to start attacking Achilles. So Achilles is still holding his shield. And so now this wave is like battering Achilles and his shield and just battering him all the way back. And Achilles is like, because he can't obviously plant his feet in the ground because he's in a water. And so instead he sees this sort of low hanging tree and he grabs the tree branch thinking that like this is a good way to stabilize myself, which it's not, unsurprisingly, because a combination of the force of the water pushing Achilles back and Achilles' strength and the whole weakness of the actual tree, that the tree ends up falling into the river. Fat load of use that was. In fact, it literally starts acting like a dam in the river, which makes Xanthus even more mad because now he's got a whole other thing to deal with on top of all the bodies. But what's good about this whole tree incident is that Achilles can use this as a way to get out of the river because Scamandros is literally going mental at this point. So Achilles pulls himself up, he gets onto the plane and he starts booking it. Like this man is running so fast that his armor is literally described as like clashing together and creating this like huge sound because he's running so fast away from this crazy river. But Xanthus is not taking that, okay? He's still mad as and in fact, he starts getting his water to like come out onto the plain and chase Achilles. Literally, the water is now chasing Achilles. And every time Achilles turns around to try and fight back at Xanthus, he then gets hit by a huge wave. So Achilles is tired as he can literally barely breathe. This is like the ancient equivalent of like waterboarding, I swear to God. Like he is just overwhelmed and he's not okay with this. And so Achilles starts like yelling up to Zeus, basically. That's all he can do at this point. He's literally thinking he's gonna die right now. So he yells up to Zeus and he's just like, no God can save me now because I'm destined to be killed by a river. And he basically just starts explaining how like he is annoyed at his mum because his mum lied to him about his like great glory of Troy, and now he's destined to be killed by water, and that's like really depressing, and he wishes that Hector had killed him instead because that would have been, you know, better than being killed by a river. Understandably, I kind of agree with Achilles right now. Now Zeus doesn't actually get involved, but hearing this, Poseidon and Athena do go down to get involved because they realize that Achilles needs a pep talk right now because he's not doing so well. So they go down to Achilles and each of them take one of his hands. And Poseidon is the one to really speak to Achilles. And he's like, look, you are not destined to die right now, but we can't fight this for you. Like, you have to fight this yourself. Your destiny is to go and push back the Trojans. Your destiny is to go and kill Hector. It's not to die right now, but you have to do it. We can't do this for you. And so Poseidon leaves. Poseidon and Athena then leave. And as they're leaving, Athena does infuse Achilles with all of this strength, mainly in his legs so that he can run a little bit faster. So she does infuse him with all this strength. And they then leave to let Achilles basically handle the battle in order to go about his whole destiny and to fulfill his fate. Now Xanthus apparently didn't hear any of this, nor did he see it, because he then starts sort of rousing up all of his waters again, which now have all of the armor of the dead people in it. So he is then trying to fire all of this metal at Achilles in order to kill him. But because Achilles now has this newfound strength in his legs, he can then run, which is fantastic. So he starts booking it, and Xanthus does start chasing him, like the waters start chasing him. And meanwhile, he is then yelling at this other river where he's like, yo, you need to start fighting this crazy man because we need to make sure that he dies right now. And in fact, Xanthus goes on to describe exactly how he wants to kill Achilles by drowning him and then holding his body at the bottom of the river. He wants to drown him that way, so that way he will never be found and he can never have a funeral, which is like really dark. But that is what Xanthus describes to this other river, who literally couldn't give less of a shit that Xanthus is mad right now. Either way, Hera now decides that now is her time to get involved. She sees all of this happening and she's like, absolutely not on my watch. So she then calls Hephaestus, who is, remember, siding with the Greeks. She calls him and she's like, look, you now have to start burning all the banks of the river and the river itself in order to basically show Xanthus that he can't be like this and he can't be a petty. So Hera's like, go and handle it. And in fact, she also warns Hephaestus that Xanthus is known for his like like sweet talk, his like sweet words. So she warns him not to stop burning the banks or burning the river or burning anything until Hera herself tells him to. Because she's like, he will try to make you to stop. And you probably will stop if you listen to what he says. So don't. Wait until I tell you. And Hephaestus is just like, cool, no problem. He goes down, starts burning everything. Like literally. He starts with the bodies on the side of the bank. He then does the trees. Homer tells us the type of trees that he's burning. He burns all the grass around the river. He starts burning the banks of the river, like the lot. And Xanthus starts getting uncomfortable, right? He starts getting uncomfortable with the heat. So he turns around to Hephaestus and he's like, I'm not even gonna try and fight you. Like, this is insane. I can't fight you. This is really unfortunate. I'm very uncomfortable. I really wish that you would stop doing this right now. And I promise that I will get out of this fight if you stop burning me, basically. And he says mainly that he'll do it because he actually doesn't have an active role in the fight. So he acknowledges that he just freaked out over nothing, which is a little detail that I love. He's just like, I was never a part of this fight anyways. I don't mind dipping out like right now. But again, Hephaestus doesn't stop because remember, he has to be told by Hera to stop, and he hasn't been told by Hera to stop just yet. So Xanthus, still mad though, right? But now his whole waters are bubbling. Like the fish are really uncomfortable. They're jumping out. The eels are jumping out of the water. Like it's just icky and too warm and it's scorching and everything is evaporating. And so Xanthus calls out to Hera and he literally says, the f is your son assaulting me for? Which is a line that I love. Obviously she doesn't say the profanity in it. I paraphrase massively. He's like, why is he doing this to me? Considering, and I think this is a very important point from Xanthus, that he has not done anything worse than what the other gods who are siding with the Trojans have done. So that's what Xanthus says to Hera. And he then promises that he will not continue fighting. He promises that he'll stay out of it. And all of this stuff, he like swears this oath, and Hera's pretty happy with this, so she then instructs Hephaestus to basically quench the fire, and she's like, you can chill, you can leave Xanthus now. So once that has been wrapped up, we then cut to the other gods who are now going to fight each other. As I said in the previous book, this is quite a funny scene because we get gods facing each other, which we haven't got at this point unless they were like in mortal form. Now it's just God in God form v God in God form. So Zeus is pretty happy with this. He hears like this massive clash come from the battlefield. He's on Olympus and he's like with his popcorn like, I'm ready, let's see this. So the first two gods who face off are Ares and Athena. Now both of them are war gods. Athena is the goddess of war strategy and Ares is the god of active war, right? So like anger and war and the actual fighting part, whereas Athena's more so the planning part. So they face off. It's a very appropriate fight if you think about it that way. But we have Ares who approaches Athena and he's just like, hey, remember how you sided with Diomedes and you like allowed him to stab me in the belly? Well, now this is payback for that and I'm gonna kill you. Which is very short trash talk and very terrible trash talk considering Ares has done nothing to back up the idea that he could face Athena. Like he has just literally done nothing the entire time. I don't believe that he's going to defeat Athena. Even the first time I read this, I was like, there is absolutely no way that he is going to defeat Athena right now, which obviously he doesn't. And this is absolutely apparent from the first attack that he does on Athena, considering he fires his spear at her Aegis, which is a dumb move. And let me tell you why. So the Aegis is this massive shield, right? It's like a very important, massive, strong shield that gets passed between Zeus and Athena, right? And so Athena has the Aegis on her, and this shield is so strong that it will not even allow Zeus's lightning bolts to penetrate it, something that the other gods know, and yet Ares is like, let me just do that. Like, what? Obviously it doesn't do anything. Literally the spear ricochets off of it, and Athena is like unfazed by it, and instead she picks up this centuries-old rock, like this super old, massive rock, and lobs it at Ares, and it hits Ares in the neck, and so Ares then gets fired back. Like, he's just like, oh, that's it. Ares is pinned to the ground by this massive rock, and Athena goes to stand over him and she's just like, I am so much better than you in battle. She also says that he's probably just trying to fight her because he's paying atonement to his mother because he abandoned the Greeks and he's now fighting the Trojans. As we have known from the very beginning of the story, Ares is a two-faced. That is exactly what the gods have called him up until this point, so we know this detail, and that is why Athena says is the only reason why he's fighting them. So Athena then turns around at the end of this though, and she's gonna go walk away, and Aphrodite comes in to pick up Ares. So she comes in, she like takes his hand, she has him stand up, and they're gonna walk away. Hera sees this and literally is like, hello, Athena, no. She's gonna go and heal Ares. You have to handle Aphrodite. And so Athena's like, cool. She literally turns on her heels. She walks back over to where Aphrodite is walking away with Ares now, turns Aphrodite around, and literally punches her in the boob. Like, that is her big moment of attack. She punches Aphrodite in the boob. And in fact, Aphrodite falls back because she is so shocked by being punched in the goddamn boob that she and Ares now are on the floor because of Athena's attack. Then Athena goes to stand over both of them, and she's just like, let this be a warning that anybody who sides with the Trojans will end up like the pair of you. And then she walks away again, except Hera's like, nice job, honey. Which is a really weird scene because it ends there and then we cut to Poseidon. So Poseidon now, he's gonna face off with Apollo. And he then says to Apollo, like, look, it would be really weird if we turned to Olympus and like we weren't fighting. So I feel like we should just like engage in some sort of fight like right now. So let's do that. And then we can go back to Olympus and at least we would have done that. Now you think that then they would just like start fighting. However, Poseidon actually goes into the story about how both Apollo and him, before the Trojan War, had gone down to Troy and had been mistreated by a previous king, not Priam. But there was a previous king who had mistreated them. And so Poseidon is explaining to Apollo that he doesn't understand how Apollo is now taking their side. He doesn't get why he would do that, considering they were both mistreated by a king. And that also explains why Poseidon has taken the Greek side, that he just doesn't like the Trojans, so he's on the Greek side, which makes perfect sense to me, to be quite honest. So he says to Apollo that because Apollo is younger, he should attack him first, because Poseidon is stronger than Apollo as well, so he should get a head start. And Apollo basically says, nah, I'm not fighting you because we're not fighting over stupid mortals. I'm not doing that. And literally Apollo just turns to walk away. He just doesn't want anything to do with it. Poseidon doesn't yell after him. He kind of just lets him walk away as well. And as he's walking away, Artemis, who is Apollo's twin sister, she comes down because she sees this and she's like, what a wuss. So she goes over to Apollo and is like, what is wrong with you? She explains that by Apollo not actually fighting Poseidon, that Apollo is basically surrendered. So Poseidon gets to walk away with the victory. And Artemis is just like, that is like not okay, and you're a weakling. And she also accentuates that Apollo has previously boasted about how he could match Poseidon in battle and how he could probably win against Poseidon. So she does also highlight in this moment that he does not have the right to ever say that again. She doesn't want to hear him say that ever again. And she's really over him being a cocky little basically. And Apollo, to his credit, he doesn't actually reply. He doesn't take the bait. He doesn't do anything. Hera hears Artemis say all of this, guys, and this is iconic, I have to say. So Artemis basically says all of this crap to Apollo. Hera's not happy about it, so she goes down, grabs Artemis's wrist, literally takes her bow off her own goddamn bow, and smacks her on either side of her face. Like, literally one way, and then backhands her with her own bow. And Artemis is so shocked. She's just like, what the hell? And in fact, she runs away just like crying. Like literally in that moment, she doesn't even have the energy to back chat to Hera. She just runs away back to Olympus and she's crying. Now, instead of then tying up that scene, because like that's what you would logically think that Homer would do, but no, he cuts then to Hermes, who is going to go and fight Leto. So Leto is the twins, Apollo and Artemis is their mother. And Hermes then says to Leto, instead of us thinking that he's going to start fighting her, he then is just like, by the way, I'm not going to fight you because you are a bride of Zeus. And so that would be like totally not chill if I did that. So we basically just get this clarification that Hermes will not engage in any sort of violence with Leto. Leto's like chill, and she picks up the bow and the arrows that have been discarded by Artemis and by Hera, and she then takes it to Olympus, where she finds Artemis, who is now crying to Zeus. And Zeus obviously is kind of laughing because he has sort of seen what's happened. So he's giggling a bit at his daughter and he's just like, what? Like, what are you crying about? And Artemis explains the situation and says, your crazy ass wife whacked me with my own goddamn bow. And that is where that scene ends. And in fact, we cut back to Apollo, who has now decided to go down to the Trojan side. And as he flies down to Troy, literally flies down to Troy, the rest of the Olympians go back to sit on Olympus. And they're just like, right, okay, this is where we're sitting. We're now out of the action. Apollo goes down and he's decided to defend Troy because he's actually terrified that Achilles is going to try and take Troy before he is destined to do so. So that is why Apollo is down there. And when we cut down to the Trojan side, we actually cut to Priam, who is now on this like great high bastion, which is like part of the wall, right? And he's seeing Achilles literally chase all the Trojans and attack all the Trojans and kill all of them. And he's like, haha, no. So he then goes down from his little area, goes down to where the guards are by the gates, and he basically instructs them to all open the gate, that they have to open the gate. Okay, it's basically what he says. He's like, open the gate because we need to let all of these Trojans back in. I'm terrified that Achilles is going to come in though as well. So once the last Trojan comes in, you then need to close the gates really quickly. Like that is what Priam tells the guards. The guards are like, okay. And so they open up the gates and in start pouring the Trojans from the battlefield because they are so scared of Achilles. Now it's Apollo in this moment who actually is the only person to come out of Troy. So he comes out of Troy, he wants to defend all the people, and along with him, he also infuses Agenor, who we've mentioned before. He infuses Agenor with all of this strength and all of this courage to come out with him, even though Agenor doesn't know that Apollo is there. He just thinks that he's like, well, now I'm really brave for some odd reason. But Apollo is there to protect Agenor in his little mission. So the pair of them go out and they're standing in front of the gates, and Agenor has this little speech to himself where he doesn't really know what he's doing. He can see Achilles running about and killing people, and he does say that if he runs now, that it's not really the best mode of action because Achilles even is really fast, and so he will obviously go and chase Agenor and no doubt will catch him and will probably kill him. So Agenor's like, well, that's not really an option. I might as well stand here, and I might as well stand my ground for the moment, because he thinks that if he's to face Achilles, he has a chance of winning because it's not up to him, nor is it up to Achilles, it's up to the gods. So that is the comfort that he needs in order to stand and hold his ground in front of the gates of Troy, which is a brave move. We gotta give it to Agenor, even though he is obviously encouraged by Apollo. This is a strong moment for Agenor himself. So Achilles comes to attack Agenor, and in fact, he does have this little moment where he's like, haha, I'm Achilles and I'm gonna kill you, and Agenor's like, haha, okay, cool, because they always have like a little conversation before they start fighting in this book. So that happens now again, and Agenor holds up his shield and he actually fires his spear at Achilles, and it does nothing. It actually hits Achilles in his tin greave, to be specific. So the greave is on your shin, hits him there, and it ricochets off. So it literally does nothing to Achilles apart from make him mad. So Agenor is a bit like, it's not gonna go very well. And Achilles starts to lunge at Agenor, and it's in this moment where Apollo shields him in the mist. He shields Agenor in this mist, takes Agenor out, puts him back into Troy, and he himself takes on the guise of Agenor, so that way he can then distract Achilles, knowing he's obviously not going to get killed because he's Apollo. So he's totally safe. He then distracts Achilles so that they start running around. Achilles starts chasing him, trying to kill him, so that all the other Trojans can get back inside the gates of Troy and into the city to safety. And that is like the sacrifice that Apollo makes. But it's not really a sacrifice because, once again, he's God. But that's how the book ends. The book ends with all the Trojans getting inside and Apollo having Achilles distracted. That's the end of book 21. So that was a really weird book, I acknowledge. It is one of the strangest books, I think, in the entire Iliad, just because of the way the gods fight and the fact that Achilles fights literal water. I mean, do you, Achilles? But literally you're reading it and you're just like, this man is literally trying to take on a wave with a sword. But either way, that is the end of the book. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. And next time we will be giving you book 22, which is wild. We are fast approaching the end. We literally have a week and a half. We have 3 episodes left. So that's it for this entire series, and it's a little bit sad. But yeah, please guys, if you have the chance, do take part in my little poll that I posted on the community tab here on YouTube. Also check out my Twitter and my Instagram for more polls to see what the next series will be here on Moaning in the new year. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you guys enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that like button, and I will be seeing you next time for book 22. We'll see you guys then.